And then he told me, I want it to be for real. When you're playing drums on screen, I want you to really be playing drums. So I said, well, then shouldn't I really learn ASL as well? And he said, that's a good point. I was like, well, I guess we should get started then.
Hi, I'm Clarissa Cruz, executive editor at Entertainment Weekly magazine, and I'm here with Riz Ahmed, star of Sound of Metal for The Awardist. Thanks for coming, Riz.
Thanks, Clarissa.
You sound great.
Yeah, right.
What? You telling me you weren't feeling it? You were in it.
We don't need to put them all out.
I know, but we just need to film.
I watched The Sound of Metal more than a year ago. It was right before Toronto. And one thing I was thinking about was that the themes in it sort of resonate in a different way now, just because the world is different. And I found myself thinking about this movie in a different way, in the way it treats marginalized communities and questions of identity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because The Sound of Metal is about a character, Ruben, who's a drummer, and he's a workaholic, and he defines himself through what he does and through his relationship with his girlfriend Lou, who's in a band with. And he suddenly faces a health crisis, and that health crisis forces him into a kind of lockdown, into a kind of purgatory, where everything he thought mattered, everything that he thought defined him, has been taken away from him. And he's, left kind of to ask these questions about how to move forward. And I think in the context of 2020 and the pandemic, that is a journey a lot of people have been on. A lot of people have been on this journey of go, 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 and this is who I am, this is my life, this is what gives me meaning. And all of a sudden, the rug has been pulled from under them. And they are now in this lockdown, in this purgatory, reassessing who they are and how to move forward. So it's strangely prescient, I think, the arc of the film and Ruben's journey is one that almost feels like a microcosm of what we've been going through as a society, from workaholism to health crisis to a purgatory of reevaluation.
I've got a little assignment for you, okay? I'll have hot coffee waiting for you at 5:30. And I'll provide a room for you.
What for?
And there's nothing that needs to be accomplished in this room. All I want you to do is just sit.
Riz, so what drew you to this role?
It was a script. Yeah, the script was just gorgeous. I didn't know anything about Darius, nothing about the history of the project. He'd been working on it for 10 years. Didn't know that he'd written two of my favorite movies of recent years, with Derek Cianfranci, Blue Valentine and Place Beyond the Pines. I just thought this is an amazing script, amazing characters, so moving. And then when I met him, I loved him. I don't know if you've met Darius, but he's just an amazing personality. Big heart, wears his heart on his sleeve, leads by example, really takes risks. For example, he decided we're going to shoot on film. That's a big risk when you've got a low budget movie. You don't have enough time anyway. It means you got 2 takes for every scene, really. And he kind of has this attitude of like, let's go for it. And I really vibed off that. I really respond to that. I like to kind of jump in the deep end as well. So we just really clicked. And then he told me, I want it to be for real. When you're playing drums on screen, I want you to really be playing drums. So I said, well, then shouldn't I really learn ASL as well? And he said, that's a good point. I was like, well, I guess we should get started then. And so we spent 7 months in every day, just kind of full time learning. And so, as scary as that process was, when I first met Darius, that challenge was part of what drew me to the project.
Well, it sounds like it was pretty intense because it was only a 4-week shoot. Like you said, you only had a couple takes for each thing. But after doing all of that prep work, I mean, what was it like? That really is diving in.
It is, and I think what I always realized shooting any film is that the challenges end up being the gifts. The stuff that you're most resistant to and anxious about ends up being the stuff that releases you. Having not much time actually was an incredible blessing because it meant we had no time to overthink anything. We're not going, let me try it this way and that way and this way. It was like you just have to go from your gut and jump and not think. You do all the preparation and then you just go. And if it works, then we just move on. We just do one take. And I think in a way, it just focused everyone's mind in a different way. It just meant that everyone just bringing their A game, and everyone's just kind of like not letting this get in the way of this, you know? So that's what that did, I think. And I think it was similar with the sign language and the drumming as well, the big challenges that seemed so daunting. You know, there were challenges, and there was, you know, it wasn't straightforward, but it ended up being an incredible key to unlock the character for me. Yeah, it just opened me up in different ways as an actor and as a person, actually. You know, my sign instructor, Jeremy Stone, would always say that there's a saying in the deaf community that hearing people are emotionally repressed because we hide behind words. When I started becoming more fluent in ASL, I found myself getting much more emotional talking about things than I would if I was just using words. And Jeremy explained is because you're inhabiting and embodying what you're saying viscerally and physically in a different way. So, you know, Jeremy in the deaf community in New York kind of taught me the meaning of the word communication when I had those words taken away from me. With all these things, the challenges end up being the things that push you to go to a new place.
All I ask is if and when you cannot just sit, you turn yourself to the pen and paper that I'm going to supply for you, and I want you to write. Doesn't matter what you write, how you write, whether it's spelled correctly, or if it's just a big mess. I don't care. No one will read it, okay? But I want you to keep writing continuously without stopping until you feel like you can sit again.
Tell me about some of the research you did. I mean, how did you sort of learn about the deaf community, and what specifically did you do to make sure that your performance was authentic in that way?
Well, it's just about, like any role, it's about kind of doing your research, meeting with people, speaking with people. In my case, you know, Jeremy Stone kind of, you know, I was privileged to be kind of welcomed into the deaf community and his group of friends in New York. We became very close. You know, we spent a couple of hours together every day for 7 months, and you know, I attended his wedding and go and hang out and go to deaf poetry slams and stuff. And it was just about immersing myself within that culture. And deafness is a culture. You know, for many people, it's not a disability. It's not a lack or a loss. It's a different way of being. It's an identity. Deaf pride is something that's real and wonderful. And so it was about, you know, initiating myself as best as I could into deaf culture and learning American Sign Language. With regards to the fact of losing one's hearing, there are moments in the film and the story where Ruben thinks of deafness as a lack and a loss, and moments when he doesn't. And so for those moments where he did, I would use kind of sound blockers. We use these kind of almost hearing aids that we'd switch into a white noise setting and place it in my ear canal. It would emit a white noise that would stop me from being able to even hear myself speak. That was disorienting, and it was a shock, not being able to hear anything and communicating with, you know, the director on a notepad. But for those sections of the film where I think Ruben starts to realize deafness isn't a loss, it's something enriching. It's an invitation to new connections that he would never have made, connecting even to himself in a new way. For those sections, I didn't use any auditory blockers, and actually it was no need because we were all communicating on set in sign language at that point anyway, because we had a large deaf cast.
So as you were talking about the way you were sort of in the community, what sort of decisions did you make as an actor? Because I can imagine there are so many big emotions that your character feels. He's got everything pulled out from under him. And I feel like so much of your performance is under the surface, which is so difficult. What sort of decisions did you make to play that?
You know, I try and make as few decisions as possible up front, to be honest. I try to kind of immerse myself into some research and really kind of understand what's going on emotionally in the script, and then to kind of take that leap of faith. And and to not know how it's going to turn out, to not know how I might play it. That's something that's, again, it's kind of can be scarier and it can be challenging to kind of relinquish that control. But I also felt that that's the journey that Ruben's on. Ruben's on a journey without any control. And for me as an actor to step in and try and control and shape this performance too much would have been wrong. I think it was about doing a lot of prep, with the drumming and sign language and immersion into a certain culture, and obviously working on the script in the way you do as an actor, but then going, okay, well, we've got a couple of takes on everything. Don't make decisions. Let the decisions make you, in a way, as a character. And so that's what it was. It was a kind of big exercise in taking a leap and then trusting that the work is there and the preparation is there. Also from an authenticity point of view, I found that I realized from talking to people, there is no one way that people react, particularly amongst late deafened people. Ruben is kind of late deafened, and he lives in this kind of limbo between the hearing and the deaf world. And there's many different ways people react. Some people try and integrate into deaf culture. Some people will hold on to hearing culture. Some people do get cochlear implants. Some don't. Even amongst the people that do, some people love it. Some people really are disappointed by it. When you realize, as in any culture, as in any experience, there's such a multiplicity and diversity of experiences within that, it actually kind of frees you up to just, what authentic means isn't trying to kind of mirror someone else's experience, is trying to have your own experience.
I mean, one thing that really struck me about the movie was its use, of sound, just in the basic sense, because you really feel Ruben's isolation, and you feel the isolation of what it might feel like to be hearing in a deaf community and vice versa. How much of that were you aware of during the filming, and how much did you not see until after you saw the final product?
I was aware that something weird was going on with the sound design, because Darius told me they'd started with sound design 2 years before they started the film. And we had Nicolas Becker, who's one of the most brilliant sound designers in the world. And he's kind of a bit of a mad scientist. Let me give you an example. Like, often on a film set, when you finish a scene, they come in and do a wild track, which means you re-record all the dialogue, just in case there was an airplane flying overhead, and, to get the lines cleanly recorded. In this film, after every scene, Nicolas would come up to me. First of all, it was weird that sound designers on set. Second of all, he comes up to me with this weird contraption that he's made in his lab. He puts it against my chest and says, blink and breathe. And now hold your breath so I can hear your heartbeat. Now lick your lips. Now swallow. So much of the auditory landscape of this film is actually constructed from Ruben's, body. It's like literally being inside his head throughout so much of the film. And it's something that's necessary as well, because often when people are in that liminal space of losing their external hearing, they still have so a lot of their vibrational hearing of their internal bodily processes. So it very much places you in the cockpit with Ruben as he's going through this experience. That paired with the camera work and the decisions of really kind of being, with Ruben, kind of turns it almost into a kind of first person movie experience, which I think helps really make it feel so visceral.
Noisy.
Search.
Throat.
Ditch.
Fish.
Talk. Ring.
Brum.
Germ. Life.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw it in a theater because obviously it was before the pandemic, and now I imagine most people will be seeing it when it's streaming. Do you think that will take away or make better, the experience of this? Because I just remember that I really felt the isolation seeing it in the theater, but watching something at home can be a different experience. There's distractions and all of that.
I mean, I
So,
guess we can't choose, right? Again, it's like
right.
what the film's teaching us is we don't have control. We have to kind of accept our circumstances to some extent. But I do think that this is the kind of film that, don't be checking your phone while you're watching it,
Right.
and use earphones or headphones if you're from the hearing community. If you're from the deaf community, then this whole film is closed captioned. Every print of this film is closed captioned, so the deaf community can enjoy a similar experience to the hearing community. And that's only right when deaf talent outnumbers hearing talent on screen in this film, when it is about a glimpse and an invitation into deaf culture. So I would say that the big thing that I'm missing from going to theaters is having the deaf community, deaf audiences and hearing audiences side by side in the theater, and this film acting as a bridge, which it has already in the screenings that it's played in. That's the thing that I'm missing out on. But in terms of your personal experience, I think either using closed captions or earphones, you can still have a version of what we'd intended for sure.
I enjoyed your entire performance, but I particularly enjoyed your scenes with with Paul Rhys. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like filming those? I mean, I haven't seen the script, but it felt so natural. So was any of that improvised, or was that just a genius script, or what was it? Yeah.
It's just beautiful writing from Darius and a wonderful actor in Paul. Paul himself says that, he spent 35 years as a day player, coming in doing, a day on a project and mostly doing kind of deaf theater in LA. And he's such a wonderful actor, and he never thought he would kind of have the opportunity to show what he has to offer. And I'm so pleased, not just for him, but for all of us who get to see this tremendous actor who's so experienced and has such depth of emotion, is so talented, and is just such a teacher, such a kind of almost, the role that he plays in the film was almost the role he played on set, which is a bridge between the hearing and deaf worlds. Paul himself is a coder. He's a child of deaf adults. His native language, his native tongue, his mother tongue that he grew up speaking was American Sign Language. He didn't speak English till he went to school as a kid. And so he brought a lot of himself to this role, but make no mistake, the thing he brought was his incredible, immense talent. And when you're working with someone like that, it's just such a gift. It's just all there, and you just kind of tune into what they're doing. Yeah, I'm just really excited for the world to see what Paul has to offer, which is so much.
Yeah, I mean, I think him and also the deaf cast just lent authenticity and all around. I mean, with your preparation, being with the community, but also with the drumming, as you were talking about, like 6-7 months of lessons is not a small thing. I mean, did you find it easier to learn that because of your musical background, or was it harder because it was a completely different skill set? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, well, I will want to quickly mention some of the other deaf cast. So we have Lauren Ridloff, who's incredible, is now in Eternals, Walking Dead. We have Chelsea Lee and Shaheem, who are completely, new actors. I really hope that this is a showcase for some of the incredible deaf talent out there that the film industry could kind of incorporate more into their stories. They're not talented despite their deafness, they're talented because of it. The richness of their experience and culture and perspective brings something emotional and rooted that we rarely see on screen. Like, they taught me how to communicate non-verbally, you know what I mean? There's something very emotionally embodied about communication within that community. With regards to drumming, I was just really lucky to have Guy Licata, incredibly patient drumming teacher, who saw how bad I was from the jump, and just went, okay, every day, we're doing every day. It was a journey, man. I mean, for a long time I was drumming the wrong way around because I'm left-handed, but I do some things with my right hand, like many left-handed people do. So it was like, they need to switch everything up halfway through. Again, it's a non-verbal communication, and it forced me to kind of be in my body in a different way. I think something that I really learned with the drums It's a similar thing we were talking about, with decisions you made as an actor is kind of, you can't play the drums. You have to let them play you. You can't think your way to playing that stuff. It's not, this isn't going to help you. You have to kind of surrender, put the preparation in your body, and then just let it do you,
Right.
It's such a, messes with your head so much. But it's like, again and again, I find with every role I do, it's like the journey you go on as an actor is the journey the character goes on in some way. And for me as an actor, I spent so much of the prep trying to headlock this preparation and headlock this story into my grip and into my control until I realized I can't. And that's what Ruben realizes, he has to. It's like, I can't control this. The thing that I value most, which is control, is the first thing to go here.
Right.
And actually, if you let go of that control, all kinds of amazing things can open up, which I think, hopefully is something we'll all learn from this pandemic and our lack of control within it.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about next. I mean, that is something that I think the world is going through because the control has been taken away from us with everything. I mean, do you think the film, I'm not going to say offers a solution, but do you think it sort of accurately depicts what it's like to relinquish that, whether it's your choice or not? A huge life change is a huge life change. Do you think that's, I guess, one of the things that people will come away with?
I hope something that people come away with from this movie is a realization that we're not necessarily who we think we are. The things that give us our identity and our sense of worth or purpose or our daily routine are things that can just shift like that. Again, during this pandemic or in this film, Ruben goes from being a professional musician to being and living on the road with his girlfriend to the opposite of all those things. There's something more fundamental that defines us than these circumstances. And often it's these circumstances that we use to define who we are. It's these circumstances that give us our tribal identity. I'm this and you're that. There's us and there's them. And I hope what people see in Ruben's journey, which is one where his fundamental identity transforms completely in the course of 2 hours, is that there's a core of humanity underneath that. And that's what we really are. And that's something we all share, whether we're hearing or we're deaf, whether we live in a camper van or live in a sober deaf house in the woods. In this time of identity politics and us and them, I think I hope people kind of walk away thinking like, who am I under changed circumstances? Maybe there's a basis to who we are that we all share,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I need you to wait for me, okay? You're it for me, Lou. You're my heart. You're it for me, okay? You gotta wait for me.
Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting, particularly with you, because not just in your roles, but also in your personal activism. I feel like you discuss identity in everything you do. I mean, is that something that draws you to certain projects, or is it just something that happens to happen in your fulfillment of the role? Or
all art is about identity. Every story is answering or asking the question, who am I? And as an audience member, every story should force you to ask that question of yourself. Who am I really? What are my values? What would I do? How am I different to this person? This character I thought was so different to me, I can relate to. So then who am I really? Art informs identity, and your identity informs your art. And that's something that I think is true of all artists. Just saying that if you happen to have an identity that is maybe not heard from or seen as much, then there's just much more apparent. It stands out. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it's like, that their identity as white, cis, heterosexual men, like that informs that story. That would be a very different story if they were like black women in that role. The world would interact with them differently. They'd be forced to make different choices. They'd have different things they could bring to it. It's like your identity and art, I feel like they construct each other. They're in constant dialogue. And I think art at its best can kind of stretch our idea of who we are.
Well, last question, because you've given so much of your time. Thank you. There's been talk about award season, Oscar buzz for this performance. I mean, it's a fantastic performance, and so I think so understated and natural. I mean, what do you think about the fact that people are talking about it in this way?
It just feels like a tremendous privilege to have even made this film, honestly. I said to Darius when we finished this, I don't know if anyone will even see this, but I don't care. This has been life-changing for me, being able to step into the deaf community, being able to kind of learn these skills that open me up emotionally, being able to make these connections and friendships with people that normally we live in such a segregated way between hearing and deaf cultures, and to connect with those people was such a gift. So I just feel like we've already kind of won something really precious, you know, in the experience of making this. Anything else other than that, if it helps people to see the film, you know, and this amazing thing that I feel we've all been lucky to have made together, then that's just a bonus, you know.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No,
Fantastic
thank you.
movie, fantastic performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarissa.